I clocked out on that cold, colorless dawn, the factory still humming and sweating behind me. I mouthed goodbye to Chen, who always took the next shift and never spoke more than he needed. His eyes met mine, and he nodded like he understood what was coming. I pulled my faded blue backpack up onto my shoulder, fingers clenching the frayed straps. The linoleum smelled like burnt glue and tired feet. No one bothered to say good luck, they barely looked at me. I was quiet even while quitting. Outside, the streetlights blinked. The LA morning threatened to turn gold but stayed pale. I walked down the avenue past shuttered dollar stores, my pockets nearly empty and hands trembling, not with fear that had gone quiet inside me hours ago. It was resolve now, a silence so dense it filled every step. My mother's apartment was only 12 dreary blocks away. The city's heart was miles behind me, Beverly Hills, Westwood pastry shops, bright bakery displays. But here in Pico Union, all I could smell was the wet pavement, oil from the corner taco cart, the sweet rot of overripe fruit piled up at the produce stand. I climbed the stairs to the second floor. My mother's curtains twitched. She opened the door before I rapped. Her bathrobe was yellowed and puckered at the collar, her hair up in foam curlers, eyes already sharp for a battle I didn't want. Inside, the air was thick with incense from a shrine in the living room corner, and the old curtains let in light in patchwork. "You were out early," she said, voice flat. "It's my last day," I answered, and there it was, her thin lips pressed together. "Gia, you have good job, benefits, what now?" I washed my hands at the kitchen sink and watched my knuckles go white against the cold water. "I want to bake, Ma," I said, and heard the familiar line echo in the cramped room. In my head it sounded old even now, but it didn't waver. Her laugh was bitter, she never tried to hide it. Laughter was a weapon in our house. "You go make cake for white people, waste your time, your education. Who you think you are?" That phrase, "who you think you are," followed me like a shadow. Who did I think I was? Just her son, a factory worker, UCLA dropout. My cousins heard her start and joined in like hyenas at dinner that Sunday. "They went for broke. You go to Hollywood, put on chef hat," Jai said, flicking crumbs off her plate. "Go then, tell me when they make you Gordon Ramsay's wife." Even Barth, who only watched TV and counted lottery tickets, let out a dry huff. "Can't even make jayambing that won't stick to pan," he muttered into his bowl, the silence strung worse than fear. My phone calls to bakeries found new ways to reject me. No training, no school. I made cakes at night in Ma's kitchen with supermarket flour and eggs, burning pans, throwing out ruined attempts before sunrise. She let me, but only with the condition, if the power bill went up, I paid it. My hands floury, eyelids heavy, heart thumping. I'd save photos of rare successes, chocolate ganache that shone, tarts that didn't collapse, on my phone, fingers uncertain over the screen. No one cheered. The silence wrapped its hand around my neck. Still, every night I ground through an extra shift at the Noodle House on Olympic. I watched YouTube videos on $8 Wi-Fi, scribbling recipes until my wrist ached. Sometimes I'd call a cousin in Monterey Park for advice, for hope, knowing what was coming. "You should apply to Target instead, or maybe do nails," she'd say, smirking into the receiver. In that silence, my resolve was a cold ember glowing under ash. One night, Ma's television flickered onto a celebrity baking show. A judge with the kind of glossy French accent I'd only faked in private said, "We taste heart in pastry." I watched grainy footage of a woman piping thick coconut cream onto taro cakes, her hands steady. I realized all those nervous hours in the kitchen let me speak a language I never learned at home. 6 months later, the money I'd saved from frying noodles and mopping factory floors paid for a community culinary program. My classmates gawked, the only Chinese guy, already older, calloused, hands thick and burnt from carelessness. I burned myself again the second week, pulling hot sugar with bare fingers out of stubbornness. My instructor scolded, "You need patience or you'll never survive a kitchen." I stared at the blue-white scars on my palms and just kept baking. Friends were scarce. After class, everyone splintered home to Culver City condos, cars I couldn't dream of. I caught the 720, always sitting alone at the back just above the wheel arch, my backpack between my knees, napkin-wrapped samples stuffed inside. One night, in a fit of self-doubt, I watched a video of patisserie in Paris on someone's cracked Instagram story, whispering to myself, "That's where I belong someday." But hope didn't taste like Paris. It tasted like the first tiramisu cupcake I made for Mrs. Rubio, my mother's neighbor, who took a careful bite and said so softly, "Oh," that I thought I'd dreamed it. She asked if I'd make more for her church event that month. Ma watched me set up a cluttered tray of sweets in her kitchen like she was watching someone else's son. She refused a taste, but she let Mrs. Rubio in, pointed out the flower still on my shirt, maybe as proof that I was lost. Word spread slow but sure, cakes for confirmations, tarts for quinceañeras, mooncakes for mid-autumn, always undercharging, never refusing a request so long as I could pay the rent. My sleep shrank, I kept my day jobs, always expecting a call from family or landlord telling me to get serious. Then there was the day I ran out of money entirely. I pawned my old watch, used it to buy butter in bulk, and scored a temp job as a dishwasher at a boutique bakery in West LA. My first break, if you could call it that. The chef there was a tall Chilean woman with buzzed hair and a way of looking through people. On my last week she caught me mimicking her laminated dough. "Who taught you any of that?" she asked, never smiling. "No one," I said. "I watch and practice every night." She shrugged. "We have 3 bakers already, but come early tomorrow. You can try making pain au chocolat. If it's bad, you go back to dishes." My hands shook that whole night. I arrived at 4 a.m., hands raw, muscles locking up even before the dough came together. When I set the tray in the oven, I could barely watch. The result was humble but edible. She took a bite, raised an eyebrow, and turned away. "Come in next week, bring your own recipe," she said, voice flat. After that, there was always work, though never enough. Saturday breakfasts for downtown pop-ups, sugar-splashed events for friends. My mother told relatives I worked in a kitchen now, avoiding the word chef like it was obscene. But as months spun by and a few checks cleared, I rented a place nearer Koreatown, a shoebox with a single oven and view of a drab alley. I built my own pastry boxes, buying the cardboard in bulk from Restaurant Supply. I printed stickers, baked BYJIA. I passed samples to security guards, baristas, Lyft drivers. Odd how strangers' opinions meant more than relatives. Sometimes, after midnight, when every pot was clean and the air smelled like almond and caramel, I'd sit in the dark silence and remind myself why I'd left the factory floor. "Resolve," I whispered. The words sounded true. The years chiseled me down to the bone, but with every order, every returning customer, my hands steadied. I joined markets, was profiled by a food blogger who loved my green tea crullers. A chef from a mid-level spot in Echo Park tried my black sesame chew, offered me a role, not sous chef, not yet, but junior pastry creative. I took it. At first, mostly low pay and grumpy line cooks who muttered about the cupcake guy. When the first investor offered me a tiny loan, I almost said no. I was used to the feeling of the world's doors shutting. But I'd learned what hope tasted like now: burnt sugar, boiled until it was caramel and then cooled into beauty. I opened my own place in Koreatown's edge. Bench seating, bright lighting, glass counters shining with perfect domes of mousse and candied citrus. The sign read JIASPASDOIS. The day it opened, my mother showed up in a cheap coat carrying a grocery bag of oranges for luck. She murmured, "You really did this," but didn't look me in the eye. I just smiled. For once, silence was comfortable. It took longer for the rest of the family to come around. For a long time, it seemed that everyone who had mocked me was waiting for it to fail. Even the old neighbors stopped by, offering backhanded compliments like "better than I expected," and "it's different." But customers kept arriving. I baked and baked, rarely sleeping, pouring myself into each millefeuille, every matcha tart. The critics came, a feature in LA Weekly, photos in the local news, pastry chef creates fusion classics with Chinatown roots. The phone never slowed. Still, I didn't go home, not really, not to those steely apartment dinners with curling linoleum and Mars old eyes. I was busy, I told myself. One evening near autumn, I got a call from my cousin Jai. "We are doing Bar's birthday," she said, voice prickly. "He wants you to come, bring dessert. He says don't make it too sweet." I could hear old laughter in the background, the same kind from all those years before. I almost said I was busy, but my throat closed up. "I'll be there," I said. The day of the party, Los Angeles sweltered in late October heat. The city vibrated with the sound of distant sirens, palm fronds rattling in the wind. I arrived at my mother's apartment, pastry box tucked in one hand. I'd spent 12 hours working on the cake. Layers of soft sponge soaked in oolong, airy whipped cream, decorated with spun sugar and tiny drops of black sesame paste, candied kumquats glinting from the top. Their voices fell silent as I walked in. Ma's living room was crowded with distant relatives, all perched on foldable chairs, balancing bowls of noodles on their thin knees. My uncle, quiet but still observant, gave me a slow nod. I set the cake on the table. Jai snorted, "Fancy box, what you get it from supermarket." I ignored her, peeling the lid open. The cake gleamed under the fluorescent light. No one spoke as I sliced it. Even Bar watched, silent, eyes narrowed. I served the first piece to him. He picked up his fork, poked suspiciously, and took a bite. There was a silence thicker than all the silences before. Then slowly Bar took another bite. Ma was watching him, her hand over her mouth. "This is good," Bar said, voice gravelly. He held out his plate, not looking at me. Another. A ripple went through the room. Cousin after cousin reached for plates. They bit into the cake, and the tension, the years, the scorn, they all seemed to dissolve for a moment. One by one their voices changed. "It's different," Jai said, mouth full, unable to hide her surprise. "Not so sweet." "It's good." In the kitchen, my mother finally took a sliver of cake, turning away to eat it, but I saw her wipe her eyes. That was the moment I'd waited more than 8 years to see. Not applause, not flowers or confetti, but people who'd doubted, who'd laughed, who now tasted something I had made with both hands and couldn't deny the truth. After most plates had been licked clean and Bar was telling some muddled story about his childhood in Shanghai, Ma came over. She smelled of tiger balm and oranges. "Gia," she whispered, voice tight, "you bake better than my own mother." You did well." I swallowed hard, tasting sugar and salt together in my mouth. When night covered Pico Union in its tired, peach-colored glow, I left the apartment with the empty cake box crushed beneath one arm. I walked back to my car, the city's breath washing over me. From somewhere above, I heard someone call down, "Hey, pastry boy." It was one of my cousins, waving through the window. For the first time, it felt like a name I could keep. I drove back through the heart of Los Angeles, headlights skimming potholes and leaning palm trees. Home was now my bakery, bright, alive, the ovens humming softly even after midnight. Inside, I tugged on my apron, rolled out fresh dough, and let the silence settle deep inside my chest. But this time, it wasn't a silence of fear or rejection. It was the quiet that comes when you've arrived somewhere real. The only sound was the steady, sure rhythm of my own hands working, the same hands that had once been mocked and now finally remembered.